Result of that is the scarier story. When we start working with a company, it takes them 4 to 6 weeks to send out an invoice after they finish the project. You can imagine what it does to their cash flow. And you dig into why they took 4 to 6 weeks and you find their operations manual. So first of all, kudos to them for having an operations manual. But you found an operations manual that had the checklist for how they bill. And it was like 6 bullet points for, what you're supposed to bill, how before you can bill, what needs to happen. The problem was this operations manual is still in place from when they were 1/10 of their current size. And so as the company grew and scaled, and that one person who used to do all those 6 of those pieces became 6 different people and then 6 different departments. They have never revisited this. So in that organization, before an invoice would go out, it would have to go through approval across 6 different departments before it would actually go out. What really drives the point home, worst reason ever to lose a customer is because you cannot bill them fast enough. They lost one of their biggest clients because they did not bill them quickly enough.
You didn't start a business to put out fires, but here you are, holding the extinguisher. Business isn't theory, it's pressure, late nights, tight margins, the thing that keeps breaking no matter how many times you fix it. When the room's on fire, the amateurs shout, the pros stay calm. That's the Fixers and Founders way, part discipline, part rebellion. We walk into broken systems, find the pulse, and make it run clean. Because calm isn't weakness. Calm is a strategy. We're operators, builders, problem solvers, born from the grind, built for the builders. Join us now as we chat with fixers and founders just like you. Let's jump in.
Welcome to Fixers and Founders, where vision stops being theory and starts moving units. I'm Tony.
I'm Forrest.
Today's guest, Nelson Tepfer, founder and CEO of ProCFO Partners and the financial fixer behind a 2-time Inc. 5000 company. Nelson helps growth-minded businesses go beyond balance sheets. At ProCFO Partners, he's built a model that delivers high-caliber fractional CFO services to small and mid-sized companies, unlocking strategic clarity without full-time overhead. He's seen it all, from turnarounds to ERP overhauls, and he's here to talk about the kind of finance that fuels momentum, not just measurement. If you're scaling and the numbers are starting to get noisy, this one's for you. I'm Tony.
I'm Forrest.
This is Fixers and Founders. Let's get at it.
Let's do it. Nelson, great to have you. Nice to see you again. I know we met at the US conference last year, I believe, and maybe before that as well. So before you were with ProCFO Partners, before the Inc. 5000, you were building companies from within. When did you first realize that strategic finance was your optimal lane to be in?
It was funny. If I had to go as far back as that, it was probably one of the very first roles I had. I think like most people, you go to school thinking you're going to do one thing, and then you actually, start working and you don't find yourself doing anything like what you actually went to school for. For me, it was actually even more, the contrast was even more glaring. I actually went to school planning on going to Wall Street. I actually had 3 offers from the bulge bracket, so I was all set to go, investment analyst, research analyst, equity on that side of things. And then a friend who was building a business said, hey, I could use some help. Do you want to work with this and, get this off the ground? And I was like, Wall Street's not going anywhere. So this seems like fun. Why don't we try this for a couple of years and see what happens? I can always go back to Wall Street if it doesn't work. And very long story short, never made it to Wall Street.
Yeah, yada, yada, yada. I'm still doing this.
Exactly. But that very first role, because of what they were building and how quickly they were growing, how the pieces intertwined, the business, finance numbers, and all that really shaped a lot of what we ended up building here in this company as well.
It's awesome.
So Nelson, most founders think that they need a bookkeeper, then an accountant, then a CFO. What do businesses get wrong about when and why to bring in a financial partner?
I think in general, the titles get used and misused way too often. And what we focus on a lot in our organization, it's not about the title. Think about the impact. Think even the intro, which is the standard, for most people think of us fractional CFOs. Take the word fractional CFO. We joke about the fact of how we react to that for a couple of reasons. Number one, everyone's a fractional CFO these days. There's no barrier to entry. Tomorrow, both of you can decide you're fractional CFO. But secondly, going back to the title conversation, even the title CFO itself has largely become meaningless. So what is the impact this role should have on a company? We define it with a pretty simple statement of it's our responsibility to build, manage, and lead the function so it supports the growth and goals of the business. But when you think about it in that context, it's not about do I have a bookkeeper, do I have an accountant, do I have a controller? Do I have the pieces of what I actually need done actually working inside the organization?
That's a good word. I like that. And the fractional title is definitely used a lot, and the titles are very confusing on what the impact is. So 100% agreed there. You've helped companies.
Just a bougie way of saying part-time?
It's a bougie way of saying 1099 is what.
I cannot tell you how long we resisted using the word fractional. We liked part-time so much better than fractional, but we stopped tilting at windmills trying to convince the world that part-time is a more accurate description than fractional. So everyone thinks fractional. We're going to say fractional, but we think something very different when we talk about it. For us, it's still up on our website. It's part-time CFO with all-time commitment.
Mm,
We own that role and own that seat. The fact that it's delivered part-time or fractional is just a means of.
yeah, yeah. You've helped companies through exits, divestitures, and double-digit growths. What's one transformation that really showed you the power of aligned finance and strategy?
Well, it starts with the alignment, the piece that you just hit on right off the bat. This time of year, we're getting into a lot of budgeting and planning conversations. It's still fascinating, scary, and amazing to me. Probably not to you, Forrest. I know some of the work that you do, and probably not to you with the conversations you've had. We have this wonderful plan. Great. Does it tie to any of the budgeting or financing conversations we're talking about? No, but we've got a really good plan. And it's like, okay, that's great, but how are you actually going to invest in all those things that you just described? Can we afford it? Do we know if it's working? How do we measure its success across all these different pieces? Oh, yeah, we'll get to that. And it's like, well, you kind of need to do those kind of things hand in hand in order for this to actually work. So, Forrest, to your point, it's like we started noticing this very, very early on. You cannot talk about strategic finance, which is how we think about this impact, without breaking those two into the separate components, but also about aligning those two really, really early on. When we start with any organization, one of the first things we need to understand is where is the company trying to go? It's great to work with EOS companies, of which you work with hundreds, because like, great, let's start with your VTO. What does it say? Where are we headed? Because all the pieces we need to help you build around the finance and accounting function need to be supporting that. What is the insight we're going to need to be making the decisions in order to help us on that?
Yeah, it's always interesting talking to other fractionals to keep on the fractional theme. Fractional CMOs, COOs, CFOs, CSOs. Even if you work with an EOS company that has a VTO, at least you have a framework of where they're going. May not be 100% accurate, but at least you understand partly where they're going, which helps you guide the conversation.
Absolutely. Very true. Because if they don't have that, we have our own version of it that we need to go through. We still need to understand where we're trying to go over the next 3 to 5 years. The fact that they have the VTO means they already did the work for us. We just get to start there.
Exactly.
Nelson, when it comes to founder blind spots, what's a financial red flag that you consistently see founders tend to miss or ignore?
So, that's a fun and interesting one. I'll say it in a little bit of a context when I say this. One of the most common things we get called in is when the founder feels like they're running it on gut instinct. Most business owners very often run their business on gut instinct until they build a foundational framework around putting that in place. The most glaring one is when they leave that for way too long, usually. But when a business owner, and this happens at any different size of an organization, and that's the really interesting part. I've seen this happen at a company of two people with a couple 100,000 of revenue. I've seen this happen 2 million, 20 million, or 200 million. So it's not always the size. I literally had a business owner tell me his exact words, which is what led me down the path of how we talk about beyond gut instinct and what does that mean. When we talk about this function and what it should deliver. He says, Nelson, this company is too big for me to run on gut instinct alone. Now, I love it when a business owner and a founder feels free enough to share that sentiment with me. What made that one in particular so much more interesting? That was a 300-person company with a controller and 9 people in his accounting function, and that was still the way he felt. To me, that red flag is that instinct kind of thing. Business owners, especially founders, they have so much in their head. They have so much that they just know because they've lived and breathed it. But you can't scale a company based on that. So how do we actually build that framework that's going to guide that success so it becomes an organization and a scalable organization outside of just what the founder knows or feels?
Yeah, it's 100%. And when I have conversations with founders, I'm amazed at how many are successful with brute force and gut instinct. Both of those things come into play.
Yeah, I have seen organizations succeed in spite of their own best efforts not to.
Yes.
Very, very true.
Yeah. So you've led ERP implementations, forecast modeling, budget turnarounds. When is the time to upgrade the systems? And what's the first domino to tip when you come across an organization like that?
So let's start with systems, just in the classical sense of the actual system that companies use. So my team has heard me say this quite often. Me personally, I have had the privilege of working across nearly 24 ERP platforms. And the one thing I say with absolute certainty is they're all terrible and they're all wonderful, every single one of them. So it's not about the system itself. It is, again, understanding what is it that the system is supposed to be doing, and therefore, what is the best solution that's going to help us move forward. So when I say it that way, it becomes a lot clearer for companies to say, oh, well, is QuickBooks good enough? I'm like, maybe. I've known very, very large companies that run on QuickBooks and they're totally fine. I know companies when they grow out of QuickBooks really, really early on. So the system itself is really important. Well, we think of systems for us, which is a little bit different when it comes to just that side of thinking the actual system that they're using. I think systems and processes around the financial operations of the company. What's going on day to day that makes the company tick from the financial lens? How do you bill your clients? How do you enter the information in your system? Who do you bank with? I think the most basic foundational areas, I think about that a lot because those will very often break. And you walk into companies when it seems like they've slapped a Band-Aid on top of a Band-Aid on top of a Band-Aid and they don't realize that's what's happening. The result of that is the scarier story. When we start working with a company, it takes them 4 to 6 weeks to send out an invoice after they finish the project. And you can imagine what it does to their cash flow if they're first waiting that long before they send out an invoice. And you dig into why they took 4 to 6 weeks and you find their operations manual. So first of all, kudos to them for having an operations manual. But you found an operations manual that had the checklist for how they bill, and it was like 6 bullet points for, what you're supposed to be, how before you can bill, what needs to happen. The problem was this operations manual is still in place from when they were a tenth of their current size. And so as the company grew and scaled, and that one person who used to do all those 6 of those pieces became 6 different people and then 6 different departments, they have never revisited this. So in that organization, before an invoice would go out, would have to go through approval across 6 different departments before it would actually go out. The scarier part, and this is what really drives the point home, the worst reason ever to lose a customer is because you cannot bill them fast enough. And they lost one of their biggest clients because they did not bill them quickly enough.
I have an attorney that I work with because he's one of the best attorneys, and I have had that exact problem. I have not left him yet, but what I have told him is that if you take 120 days to bill me, the terms are now 120 days plus 30.
There you go.
It still doesn't work. He still doesn't send me his invoices on time. So
Yep.
I think he needs to hire you.
he probably does. Probably does.
So, yeah. Speaking of hiring, then Nelson, fractional CFO, we touched on earlier. It's a newer concept to a lot of small businesses. What's your advice to founders who are unsure if they're big enough to need your services?
So what I tell everybody is at least have a conversation. Talk to a peer or talk to somebody like this in our space. I cannot tell you how many times I've had the conversation where I tell them you don't need us yet. You should do these 3 things instead before you work with an organization like ours. And we can have that conversation again in 6 months or a year from now. And then you decide if you're ready for us. So the right vendors and right solutions in the space, I think is really important to be talking to, but also talk to peers. I mean, we've some stories up on our website where they're like, oh, I wish I would have started working with you 2 years ago. If you're thinking about whether you do or don't need it, you definitely need something. Whether it's us or something else in the space, you definitely need something. So start having the conversations with who you're talking to. Talk to us. Again, we'll tell you if you're ready to work with us or not, but what that actually looks like. But we definitely suggest for most business owners, when they have that feeling, if they're not sure, they definitely need some kind of change. It's just a question of what they're willing to do about it.
It's a great trust exercise that you go through when you can tell a client, hey, you're not ready for me right now, but here's another resource that you can use. I've done that in my professional career, and it's amazing how many times they come back to you when they're ready because you gave them good advice at the time. So that's good stuff. So we got some wild card questions for you. What's a decision? Real wild. What's a decision you almost didn't make, but now you can't imagine your life without it?
Well, because we're on the topic, I'll give the simple one. On the professional side, at least for sure, I got into this space a little bit backwards. Most people who get into the fractional executive kind of space, they're either in between roles or they're thinking about what they want to do next, and they just start doing this as piecemeal or things in between, and then they either build something around it or continue proceeding with it. I was what I thought at the time happily employed as a full-time CFO when a friend of mine reached out to me and said, again, a friend of his is having some trouble. Can I give him some advice? And I was like, help out a friend of a friend. Sure, we'll have a conversation. And that conversation ended up turning into a year-long interim CFO role that I actually juggled with my full-time role. So it was a ridiculously busy year. But at the end of that year, I was like, okay, this is a lot of fun. Not only is it a lot of fun, I get to learn a new company, new business, new industry, and the things that were day-to-day in my previous role is like magic to this company.
Yeah.
I want to do more of this. So at that point, what I was deciding was, okay, do I really want to see how far I can take this, or do I want to just go back and just do my regular full-time stuff and figure out my next CFO role and what that will look like? And so what I did was played it a little safe, but also taking some risk as well, which again, for entrepreneurial CFOs, that's probably par for the course as you take the calculated risk. I converted my full-time role into a part-time one, and then I started doing this on my own. I didn't want to leave them hanging, frankly. I just walk out the door and it's like, okay, thanks. It's been fun. I'm out. But so I converted them into a part-time one. And then I started doing this on my own for about 7 to 8 years before eventually, going down the path of co-founding this company and building this one out.
I love how you just said that the day-to-day work for you that you were doing in your full-time job was
Like
informational.
magic.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
I've seen that all year this year as I started my business too. It's like, this is blocking and tackling, guys. This is just basic fundamentals, but it is magic for people. So that's a good word. That'll be the
I'm
soundbite for
grateful
this.
those folks are out there that need that help.
Oh yeah.
I'm super grateful. I hope there's more every day that need that help.
Yeah.
But and it stuck with me as soon as you said it too, Nelson. Wow, yeah, what a great way to put that. That's exactly my sentiment, and it's been my experience. So, last question for you, and I want to thank you for joining us. It's been a real pleasure getting to pick your brain and get to know a bit about you. Real classy fella. So, say your children ask you what it means to be good at business. What do you tell them?
It's a very funny question because, as I shared with you, Tony, I have twin 11-year-olds and it's a 13-year-old,
Right.
all three daughters. And versions of those conversations have happened in the last year or so. And some of the answers have been
Yeah.
absolutely hysterical. Some of the conversations have been really funny. Good at business means a couple of things, is what I tried to explain. Is you need to be able, one, it is about communication more than it is about specifically expertise. You can be an expert at something, but if you cannot communicate it, the expertise doesn't matter. And this is true of so many things. So just because you know something doesn't mean you can communicate something. But if you can't communicate something, the fact that you know it doesn't help you or doesn't help anyone essentially on that side, unless you're very happy doing something on the side without talking to a single person essentially over there. And there are roles like that for people who enjoy doing that. So for me, it is about the communication. Being good at business is about the ability to communicate. And the experts, if you think about the greatest leaders that you've known, are able to communicate the complex very simply.
That is so timely. My son is here in this co-working space with me today, getting his master's, and that's a conversation we had driving to the office a little while ago, is that you have to be good at communicating and translating so that people will understand it. You can't just be good at something. So that's a good one.
So, quick takeaway then on that note, if you wouldn't mind, what's a good resource that you've come across, to help you improve the communication?
So this is where the world we live in today gets even more and more fun. We live in a world of AI, which
Yeah,
is entirely built
right.
around large language models. So you think about the tools for communication that exist today are entirely different level from at any time in history and will continue to rapidly change at a pace never seen before. So we're a big believer and lean into the change. Use it, but you still need to understand what is actually happening over there so you can communicate. Because try having a conversation with somebody and it's like, wait, before I answer you, let me just type this up on ChatGPT and see what it tells me to say first. So use it by all means as a tool, but recognize that it is a tool in helping you actually do this communication at this point in time. It will continue to change.
The irony has not been lost on me so far, Nelson, that I have admittedly used ChatGPT to learn how to be more human to communicate with other humans.
That's great. Again, it's use whatever tools that exist. Right now is one of the most accessible ones and a really, really good one, as opposed to almost any other time in history.
Yeah, I agree.
Good stuff. All right. As we wrap up, this was Nelson Tepfer, proving that strategic finance isn't just about the numbers, it's about the navigation. Whether you're heading for a capital raise, an exit, or just clarity, you don't need to go it alone. A good CFO helps you measure. A great one helps you move. I'm Forrest,
I'm Tony.
and this was Fixers and Founders.
Oh, my darlings, look at you. Still here with me till the end. That's how I know you're one of us. The fixers, the founders, the ones who build in the chaos and still manage to laugh through it. Drop a comment, share your sparks, and connect with each other. This is where the net weaving begins. Like, share, and subscribe to keep the fire glowing. Until next time.